laughing because it's been fun for me to think about what I did over 50 years ago, if you can believe that. This is my sash, and I had carefully sewed all these on, and as you can imagine, when it goes over your shoulder like this, it's hard to get them to look straight when you look at it. But Laura very nicely brought a book, which I don't ever remember having my own book when I was in the 1950s in Scouts. And 6 of the badges on here are some of the same badges that I think are still in your book today. But they're a little bit different. There's one for camping, there's one for musicianship. I think this one must be for pets. It has a dog and a cat on it. There's one for photography, which is a little bit different from what the one looks like today. And I actually have a picture of myself here going to the Girl Scout Roundup, which was held, I don't know if they're held every few years still, or...
they do something.
This was in 1959, so again, it was 53 years ago. But I went to Colorado Springs, Colorado, so that was an exciting time for me. I also did a lot of canoeing. I went on a 10-day canoe trip around Illinois. I was from up around Rockford, and we went down the Rock River, and we would stop in different people's backyards and farmers' places mainly. And one place we stopped, I have a funny story to tell. I don't know how much you've done with identifying plants and poison ivy and some of those things, but here we were, we'd been actually paddling all day, and we got out, and we all had duties, and so my duty, along with a couple others, was to build a latrine. So we were really proud of ourselves because we found a big log that was such that you could sit on it and lean back, and we thought this was going to be great style. But what happened was that when our troop leader went to look at it, she said, "You girls built it right in poison ivy." So that was not a big hit to have that. As you know, poison ivy is one of those things you want to stay away from. But I also noticed that there's one here for musicianship and painting, and this one has the name Dabbler, which I found interesting. I couldn't figure it out. It's a number of tools, and it has a lot of things like learn how to weave a basket or make several other things. Skating, we did a lot of ice skating in our area. I'm not certain what this cornucopia might be, but I have a cornucopia. I have a Capitol building, so I must have gone, we must have had something related to civics or the national country. And this is the Winged Messenger. Just looking quickly at your cadet book, I see you have lots of things about the internet and using the internet. Well, the Winged Messenger, I'm not certain, I don't think that's running because, believe it or not, this era that I grew up in was before there were Title IX things, and girls participated equally in sports. We played intramural sports, and we had a girls' athletic association, but we didn't have teams. Although I always did lots of hiking and camping. I think this might be something to do with water safety. I did earn my water safety instructor, and I taught swimming, so I was often known to be doing that. And here's a red, white, and blue badge, I don't know. And the waves, whether we were learning something about nature, I don't know. But our motto, be prepared. The cardinal up around Rockford, Illinois, northern Illinois, what must have been our symbol for our troop, and then 224 was our troop number. I also brought along a couple things that I thought you might find interesting, because these are some newspaper articles that my father did carefully save and document, so I'll pass them around. This first one, we're going on a camping trip at White Pine State Park, which is up near Oregon, Illinois. And so it says, for Mount Morris Senior Girl Scouts, and I was 15 at the time, wave goodbye as they work at loading sleeping bags, folding cots, and chocolate cake in the trunk. Now, how many times do you take chocolate cake in the trunk?
We'll have to add that to our list.
Yes, yes. So I'm the one waving in the upper corner there, which you'll find that kind of interesting. And when I mentioned photography, I realized in this one, which is about when we were ready to go to the National Roundup, I have one of those old brownie cameras that the bottom flipped down and you looked in it and then it projected the image, or the image came in and then you could see the image. But you see them in museums today. I think maybe I saw some over in Knoxville when I looked at the Girl Scout exhibit, that they had a nice exhibit. So I will send this again. I'm in the right hand holding the camera. First I thought, what are you holding? And then I realized it's a camera. And here's another one that I find very interesting. If you ever do have the chance to go to a national roundup, or even some of the trips that we took in our local council, Camp Medill McCormick was located near Rockford, and we met lots of people there, and I went several summers, and then this canoeing trip that we also took was through that particular one. I believe that's been sold. I don't think it's a Girl Scout camp anymore, but through that group, we had a pretty active local chapter, and so those of us who went to Roundup, and here I am inside a teepee peeking out, because this was in Colorado Springs, Colorado. But the memories from that are still very strong for me, because it was the year that Alaska became a state, 1959, that I went to this. And so we had a special trooping of the flags, and they had all the flags from all the nations, and we celebrated that, and that was pretty momentous. And again, we were out in some farmers' fields, in the peaks of the Rockies though. We had Pikes Peak in the distance, which was fun. And what they try to do in that is mix you up with lots of people from other groups. So next, well, on the end in this one is a woman, and again, I still remember this story. Karen Bon Jensen was from New York, and I had never really been out of Illinois too much, and here was someone whose father worked at the United Nations, and then she was telling us about this that summer, and within a year or two there was the Hungarian uprising, and he was compromised, and a book came out about it called Betrayal at the UN. And I was a pen pal for a number of years with her. I have since lost touch, but you can see her on the far left, and then I'm the one that's a little bit taller. One of the first, I'll send that this way just for variety. One of the first things we did when we got there was we bought hats that were straw hats, and we began to put little souvenirs on them, and everybody from different areas had brought souvenirs. So most represented their state or their country in some way. And here's a slightly larger blown up one of that one too. And the one friend of mine who was the correspondent has her Girl Scout report. And it says, when the girls disembarked in Colorado Springs, they were officially greeted by loudspeaker and boarded buses to the roundup site. They bought cowboy hats and ties and began putting up tents. And two of the girls were assigned the duty of building the tables. I mean, it was essentially quite a operation to get all these people in one place. My father was also a Boy Scout leader, so he went to a national jamboree for Boy Scouts, but this is a Girl Scout version, and I almost wonder if they do it every few years. I'm not sure they do it every year.
I think it's every other.
Yeah. It says, next morning, girls from all over the world gathered for the raising of the flags of many nations. We had campsites every night. And the woman who wrote this says, it gives us a humble feeling to realize as we look over the many thousand tents and girls, of which we are a very small part, that these have one thing in common. They are all Scouts working together to promote a better understanding of the world and to learn to live together as one large group. And as I was glancing at some of the things in the book and also listening to you talk about the pledge and the promise, I thought in the laws, it still is the foundation of what is so important, I think, to lots of us. So I just have one other thing. My friend who wrote that, was the correspondent, is still my friend, and she gave me this not too long ago. We had my 50th high school class reunion, which means 50 years ago I was 68, I'm sorry, 50 years ago I was graduating from high school at the age of 18. So those of you can do the math and figure out how old I am. And this is something she brought to me, and she said you might like it, and it's special stationery that's got a block print on it that says Girl Scout Roundup, Colorado Springs, Colorado. I think I would say that I have many fond memories of scouting, and I was a very active child. I heard some of you talking about how you like to get outdoors, and I spent a lot of time outdoors My father had 3 daughters and I was the oldest, so I was the one who mowed 4 acres every day of the lawn, and our kinds of things that you have. But what we did in those days when we went up by Rockford was we had a wicker basket, and it was a wicker basket that was about 5 feet deep, and you can imagine how heavy that was when you put everything in it that you needed. So there was nothing in it prepared that helped us with sleeping bags. We had those big old heavy Colemans that weighed 5 pounds. You've probably seen them. And tents were like that too, no backpacking, big heavy canvas tents. I think that we had troops and active people that did a lot of this, and I'm very excited to see how many of you are still involved in scouting, and I thought if you have any questions, I'd be happy to ask anything you want to just tell you a little bit about myself. I think I learned to follow through with things like getting a syllabus ready for a class, and I've been a teacher at the college level, did these go around too, for many years. Over 35 years in the classroom, but right after I got out of college, I went to the Navajo Indian Reservation in Arizona, and I lived there for a year as a volunteer in service to America. Then I worked at a community college in Arizona for 15 years and did a few other things related to teaching and education, but have always been involved, and moved to Illinois again, having grown up in this area, almost 20 years ago when I married a man I had known in college. So I have appreciated being back in Illinois, but I still have a fond spot for a lot of the mountains and the Grand Canyon and places you can hike in Arizona too. So I'd be happy to take any questions you have, or if you want to ask me about something I didn't talk about.
Who has questions? Raise your hand. Carly.
I have a lot. What age did you start Girl Scouts?
I think when I was about 6 years old. I believe I was a brownie. Yes, 6 years old. I was a brownie, and that's what they called the early years, and then you went right into Girl Scouting at, I guess, I'm not certain what the age was. Probably 14, maybe high school, I don't know. You don't remember either?
Well, I know it went from, when I was in, brownies were 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade.
Okay.
And then 4th grade, I think you started Girl Scouts.
Okay.
But now everyone is considered a Girl Scout, and it starts in kindergarten, goes all the way through high school.
Okay. Okay. That's a good question.
That's right. Once you're out of high school, you can become a leader. Ivy.
How long did you do Girl Scouts?
I did it up until I was 18 years old, and then, so probably from age 6 to 18. And when I did graduate from high school, I went to college, and I was not a leader at that time, but I have always been interested in it. That's why I came to your celebration. Did you have another question? Well, I was just going to ask you what age you started.
6 or 7.
Okay.
That was the beginning of the brownie. How many times did you go camping?
Well, probably in the summer primarily. For about 4 or 5 years, almost every summer, I went to one of these camps that would be like 10 days, a week or 10 days. Our troop went on overnights to places like White Pine State Park, and one of the funny things that happened one time was we were up on a hill, and that was only about 5 miles from Oregon, Illinois, and near the Rock River, and it poured rain that night, absolutely poured. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but to get there and into the park, you go through fords where the road goes through the water. And so all of our parents were really worried about us, and in the middle of the night, they came out and woke us up and said, you have to come home because the fords are gonna flood, and we don't know if we can get you out of here, because there were 2 or 3. So in the middle of the night, we had to pack up. So we probably, as a troop, camped maybe once or twice a year. So I didn't actually really count them like that. I can say that I went